Happy New Year. Welcome back. Today, we are going to get into a really cool subject that I thought was really cool. You might as well. We are going to talk about the difference between pot still distillation and column still distillation. You're at the Whiskey Shaman podcast. Let's go. I'm going to stop right there, man. I will tell you right now, it is windy as heck outside. We are fixing to have a cold front come in. So if I'm a little laggy, that might be the reason. I don't know. But we are going to get into pot still distillation versus column still distillation. We talked about this subject for a brief minute in episode 8. Yeah, go back to that one. Listen to that one. It was a great episode. We talked about all things distillation. We're not going to get so much into the process itself of distillation. We're going to get more into the differences between pot still and column still and the esters and the congeners that it creates to create the whiskey that you're drinking, which is really cool. I have a ton of notes, a ton. We are going to talk about specific whiskey brands that do a specific profile to get these flavor congeners into their whiskey so that it tastes the way it's supposed to taste. We're going to talk about everything from scotches to bourbons to Irish to all of the things. And I'm sipping on a little whiskey as well. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about the whiskey at hand. This one, hold on. Good Lord. I poured the sample, right? And then I put the sample bottle to the side. And guess what? I had to go get it. So this is a SMWS sample that was sent to me, Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. This is number 5975, Walk Down Memory Lane. It's a 12-year-old, and the proof is 110. And so I looked up what 59 was, and 59 is, I'm going to butcher it, but it's 10 inch, TEANINICH. And as I was doing some research, because I had never really heard of that particular brand, and there's a reason, because they mainly are in blends for Johnny Walker, but they are a single malt distillery as well. So, and the fact that I'm able to get a single cask of it, I don't know if it's been finished or anything. In the color on it, those of you on the Patreon will see the color on it is pretty light. You're not on the Patreon, so you don't get to see the video of this here podcast. But you can go to patreon.com/the Whiskey Shaman. Am I already selling stuff already? Good Lord, get over yourself. No, the color on it is super light. So I'm thinking it's only bourbon influenced, but I haven't got into it yet. And why did I pick this whiskey? Well, more than likely, so most single malt scotches are pot distilled. So this one being a 12-year-old single malt, I'm guessing, I'm not 100% sure, I'll be able to tell you on the flavor that it is pot distilled. So let's get into it. The nose is super fruity, light. Oh, guess who gave me this sample? I'll give you 3 guesses. No, those of you at home will know automatically. It was Dylan over at Whiskey House Pub House. He gave me this sample, and thank you so much, buddy, for that. I always love trying new and different scotches and whatever, so thank you so much. But anyway, back to the, man, it's super fruity. Has a little graininess to it. All right, let's get in on the taste. Excuse me, I'm going to step back. Oh, that's super viscous. Oh, there's a tinge. And I'm talking, oh, man. Wow, it just envelops. I'm talking a tinge of smoke at the back end. The smallest amount. I cached that entire sample because we're gonna be talking for a minute, so I wanted to make sure I didn't have to re-pour. Man, that is really good. The smokiness on the back end is like, okay, here's what it's like. Have you ever had Kingsford charcoal, specifically Kingsford charcoal, and then you're putting it in your Weber kettle or whatever, you're gonna make some hamburgers or chicken or whatever, it doesn't matter, and you get it on your hand, and then you accidentally lick your finger, but it's kind of the one that has the fire starter already in it. So it's like an alcoholic, which would be, that's ethanol too, I guess. It's like a pre, the pre light, the fast light Kingsford, and then you accidentally put your finger in your mouth. That's kind of what it is. It has that smoky, but it's not smoky. It's like char. You know, it's really interesting. All right, let's get into the thing. Thank you, Dylan, so much for sending over that sample. I really appreciate it. You did not have to. If you guys, any of you out there, would like to send me samples to try live on air, I'll do it. Yeah, I will have my email address in the comment down below. And if you want to mail it to me or whatever, care I'm all about care packages, and I will give you a full shout out on the show. So let's get into the subject at hand. I don't have any weekend whiskey stuff. It's been kind of a allocated season is going like crazy. I got absolutely zero bottles. Yeah, I did. I got zero bottles for Christmas. I got zero bottles. I bought zero bottles. I did get two bottles in the mail. And then I got a sample pack from a distillery in the mail. One of them just hasn't came out yet, so I'm not going to tell you. But I was able to get a bottle of the Found North single barrel from the Chill Filtered podcast. If you guys don't listen to the Chill Filtered podcast, you need to go over there. They don't know I'm giving them a shout out, but Cole and Brian over there, they are doing some really cool stuff. They take a whiskey, kind of like I'm doing, and they showcase it. And they talk about the whiskey and do all the things, and they rate it, and kind of like I do in my reviews, but um, they're doing it in a whole format of they talk about the distillery and when it was opened and all the things, and they do some pretty, fantastic bottles, like Russell's 15 and all of these, bottles that I'll never be able to get. I don't know how they do it. They went through the entire BTAC line. I've only had, like, 2 of them, samples. I actually got a bottle of, Thomas Rich Handy, but I digress. Go check them out. Anyway, where was I going with all that? Where was I going? No. Anyway, yes, allocated season, right? Around Christmas, these big box distilleries, they want to release all of their stuff, like the birthday bourbon and the Wellers and the Pappies and all the things. They want to release those, and they want to have a lottery, and you go stand in line for 82 hours. And I'm not doing that. For one, I don't care. I'm not trying to get that one. I do, yeah. Now, if somebody gave me a bottle, if they gave me a pour of it, I would be more than gracious about it, of course. But at the same time, I'm not trying to go out and seek those bottles. I don't seek bottles. There was a couple in the beginning that I was like, oh yeah, I need that bottle. But now, I don't know. I think this might be my little New Year thing. I don't do resolutions or anything like that. So just to kick ass and take names, that's my resolution, which, we going to do that anyway. So let's get into the subject at hand. Yeah, the allocated season, all that stuff. I didn't pick up any bottles beside the Found North single barrel, which is, I know it's going to be amazing. I haven't popped it open yet, but I know it's going to be amazing. Tonight is my deep dive for Larrikin. So, by the time you see this, it won't matter. But I don't even know which one I'm going to do. I have 4 different samples of them. I did a video on the bottled and bond, so I'm probably not going to do the bottled and bond. I thought about doing the rye whiskey or the single barrel Kentucky Bourbon Festival pick. Either one of those. Anyway, you guys don't care. By the time this comes out, it'll be next week. So it doesn't matter. So let's talk about pot stills. All right. So let me give you a little bit of backstory. Go like I said, go back to episode 8, I think it was 6 or 8. Anyway, and let's distill this down, I think is what it says. Um, Go back there and listen to that because it was a lot of information that I don't want to repeat. I know that was last year, year and a half ago, or whatever. And if you guys need a refresher, I can do that, and I'll give you a little synopsis of it. But I'm not going to break down the whole thing because it's a lot of information, and I have a lot of information. I have like probably 20 pages of information to get through. Hopefully, I'm not going to keep you all night. I promise. This is. I want to make sure that I'm staying upbeat with all this stuff. Um, so there's two different types of. There's multiple ways that you can distill things, right? So you have a beer or a distiller's beer, right, that you make out of corn, barley, wheat, oats, rice, whatever. It doesn't matter as long as it's a grain, right? You're making whiskey, and then you ferment it, and then you're going to distill it. The way you distill it matters because when you ferment things, and we talked about that on our yeast episode, and I'm going to have some people on this year that are yeast experts, and they're going to tell us a little bit more than I could tell you about yeast and stuff like that. So just prepare for that. And I do have people lined up knocking at the door already. So that's exciting. I need to move the mic a little bit because like I'm talking into the arm of the mic. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so so then when you distill it, the yeast and the way that you did your fermentation and your mashing matters because all of the sugar that's in that water, because obviously grains produce sugars, and the yeast eats those sugars. Correct? We've talked about this multiple times. I'm not trying to rehash on it. So when you distill it the first time, normally you want to keep all of the material, and you just want to get the water off of the alcohol. That's all you're trying to do is get that water substance off of the alcohol. Because when you make a mash, you put grain in water, right? Well, then that grain turns into a sugary substance, like a syrup almost. They actually sell a syrup called LME. It's liquid malt extract, which is the extract of the malt, right? A lot of beer brewers use that to up their potential alcohol content. It doesn't. I mean, some of them are, like a honey malt or whatever, but that doesn't matter. I digress. We're not talking about flavors of the grain. We're talking about other things. So when you're doing all that, you put all those things into your still. You want to carry over all of the flavor. You don't want to have anything stripped away because then the only thing that's going to come over is the ethanol. And ethanol in itself does inherently not have flavor other than what you guys are thinking right now. Vodka, Everclear, things like that. That is what ethanol in itself tastes like. It is the cleanest, purest form of ethanol is those things, right? It does have a flavor, some sort of flavor, and it is dependent upon the type of grain you're using, even at the vodka level where you're distilling it super high. It does have a difference. Like corn in itself, it's going to have a very neutral grain taste. Whereas if you do like a rye whiskey or oats or something like that, the flavor could be very different. A lot of distilleries, when they're making like a specialty, like a gin or something like that, they will make vodka out of rye whiskey, or they'll make vodka out of wheat whiskey, right? They'll make a wheat whiskey and they'll distill it super high, and then that flavor will carry over. So they want a little bit of flavor. That way it flavors the gin a little bit. Does that make sense? And we're not talking about gin today, right? We're not talking about that, but it gives you a basis of what I'm trying to get at, because we are going to, here in a couple minutes, we're going to get deep in the woods on the congeners that are in the actual alcohol itself. And you want to keep all of those congeners that you can. Now, if you're making a light, pretty, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I got in trouble on my live stream. I've already talked to you about this, talking about Irish whiskey being triple distilled. Not all Irish whiskey is triple distilled, but the ones that are, they do that to make it have a lighter flavor. Now it's triple distilled pot still. Okay, most of the time. Sometimes it's column still, but a lot of the times it's triple distilled pot still, and they take certain cuts and they only use the hearts out of this one, and then they'll take the tails and back end, what they call the back ends, off of the other ones and distill them separately, and then distill both of those together. It's really strange. They do a queen's cut, all of the. Yeah, I know I'm blowing your mind already. It makes me need another drink. Speaking of that, where's my water? Let me find my water. There's a reason I couldn't find my water. It's because it was in the house. I'm recording in a shed outside of the house. If you guys didn't know that already, it was actually a potting shed that the previous owners used to keep all their plants in and stuff like that. And I turned it into the whiskey layer. I don't keep closed bottles of whiskey in here. I tried, and I ended up busting a couple of them because it gets super hot in here and super cold. I have an AC sitting next to me and a heater over there, and they, but when it gets super cold, we're talking, it gets below freezing in here, and I don't want to potentially break bottles. And then in the summer, it gets well over 100 degrees in here. So I'm not trying to have that fluctuation on my bottles because it'll wear the corks out faster. All the ones that the Patreon can see behind me are killed bottles, and I kind of redid. You can kind of see I kind of redid it and took out a lot of bottles that were just not as, I don't want to say not as special, because all whiskey is special, right? Somebody made that whiskey. It's good. Don't get me wrong. But the ones that weren't as special to me, I guess you could say. So let's get back to the subject at hand. So when you're doing the distillation process, you want to keep as much of that flavor as possible, because that flavor, when it's in the barrel, is going to transpire into really good notes. And we're going to get into those notes here in a second. So there's two different types of distillation methods you can do. There's three, but it's really the same thing. Well, there's actually 4 or 5. Anyway, it doesn't matter. All distillation is what they call fractional distillation. So basically, it's a kind of a bell, what they call a bell curve, right? It goes up and then back down, right? So at the precipice of that is when you get your quote unquote hearts, right? So, but it's a gradient. So like at the beginning, you're getting hearts, but it's covered with a lot of heads as well. And the heads are like really nasty, what you would consider ethanol-y, very rubbing alcohol. The smell of rubbing alcohol is what it would be like. And then the closer you get to the hearts, and that's why, people who do distillation, they are very adamant about the way that they distill and where they make their cut points. Now, when you're doing first distillation, I don't know why I'm talking about this. It doesn't matter. You keep all of the product. You can take a little bit of foreshots, what they call foreshots, to kill some of the methanol, but methanol has a bell curve as well. And there's actually more methanol in beer and wine than most whiskeys. There's methanol throughout whiskey. So like this whiskey that I'm drinking right now has methanol in it. The amount is probably 0.0004 whatever, whereas a beer has methanol in it because it has not been distilled out. So the fermentation process created the methanol as well as ethanol, and it's not taken out. That's why when you get a wine drunk or a beer drunk, your head hurts, your eyes are hurting, your whole body is aching. You have a whiskey drunk, and I'm not condoning over drinking. I'm not at all. You get a whiskey drunk, it is different. It is a different drunk. I'm just saying, the hangover part of it. You know what I mean? I do not condone over drinking. Please do not. This is not what this show is about. If you guys have been following for a minute, you know that we are about responsible drinking. We love talking about whiskey and the whiskey process. But if whiskey is a problem in your life, go get help. Talk to me. I will talk you through it. I am not a counselor. I have nothing to do with that. But at the same time, I have family that's been in that and they understand it. I love to enjoy whiskey, but I don't ever want it to get to a point where I'm abusing it. Does that make sense? So don't think that I'm condoning any of those things, because I'm not. But in my younger years, I've been, like but I live in a small German town. They drink beer. That's what they drink. And, you're barbecuing, you're doing all the things. They drink a lot of beer. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They drink a lot of beer. So they'll go through like, 12-pack, a case of beer a night. And I'm like, whoa. Once you get a couple of those in you, even though it's the light beers and whatever, once you have enough of them, you're like, oh wow, this is a different feeling. You know what I mean? That's the methanol. So just understand that. So pot stills are just that. It's a huge vat that you put your whiskey in, or your wash, and then it has a bulbous chamber. It's it can be. I mean, you can get. Oh, good Lord! The ones at Balcones, I think they're like 3,500 liters or something like that. They are so huge. They are big. I mean, and in Scotland and places like that, they're 5,000, 6,000 liters. And they have multiple of them running at the same time off of steam. Most of them are ran off of steam, which is very efficient, actually. Running steam is one of the most efficient ways to distill. And that's what keeps home distillers, and we're not talking about home distillation, but that's what keeps home distillers from doing that, is because the cost effectiveness for a home distiller to turn around and create a product that is that they can put on the shelf, it would cost them 10 times the amount doing it on gas or electric or whatever they're running. It would cost them 10 times the amount of money than it would with steam. Okay, just understand that. So a pot still is just that. It's a big, huge vat, copper. It just kind of depends upon the distiller. The copper contact does matter. You can put little copper scrubbies. You can put what they call rashing rings in the distillation path. And what the copper does is it takes some of the of the sulfurous compounds out of the distillate, right? So when you distill it, and that's why the copper also, not only that, but copper patinas. You get what I'm saying? It changes color because it oxidizes, right? And so that oxidation through time creates flavor. Yeah, on the inside. So on a copper pot still, you can clean it as much as you want, but the alcohol in there will actually pit the copper. It'll patina the inside of the copper. And because copper, it's a metal, right? But it's also a porous metal. So it will actually absorb. I'm not a scientist. It will actually absorb some of the spirit. Does that make sense? And that's why a lot of times when people are doing gins or botanicals or something like that, they will have a separate still to do just that. Because you clean the still all you want. I've heard that the next time you do a distillation run and you're trying to make a really clean whiskey or something like that, it could have notes of coriander or notes of juniper or something like that in it. Something you wouldn't want in your whiskey per se. Now, if it had notes of allspice or something like that, that might be a little bit different. It'd be like a old fashioned in a glass, right? I say all that to say, the pot still is just that. It's a big pot, and then it has a dome on top of it. Some people call it an onion. And what that does is that creates what they call passive reflux. See, I'm learning. I'm teaching and recalling stuff in my head at the same time. It creates passive reflux, which basically when the vapor gets heated up to 172 degrees, then the alcohol starts to distill, starts to rise off of the liquid, and it adheres to the copper dome on the inside. Well, that copper dome at some point is cooler than the boiling liquid down below. So it will condensate on the sides and run back down into the pot, therefore creating what they call passive reflux. Now, it is minimal at best, but it does create and scrapes the copper off, therefore helping to some of the sulfurous compounds that yeast can make, and mashing and grains have just inherently in them. They have sulfurous compounds in them. It helps to alleviate some of that. So it goes in there, does its passive reflux, and then it goes down what they call the line arm. And then the line arm, depending upon the distillery, the brand, the way the still is made. It can go straight, like just perpendicular. Is that the right word? Yeah. Level across. It can be actually cocked up a little bit, and some of them are cocked down. And depending on the percentage of degree gives you the different amount of flavor. Because you have to think about it like that. It's like a slide, okay? Like a children's slide. The line arm being at a 1% grade, right? 1% of level, 1% off of level. Does that make sense? I'm using plumbing terms, and I'm sorry. 1% off of level. So it would be very slight. And so the distillate would actually roll down the copper instead of, if you did a 10% grade, right? It's going to be a lot more. So therefore, it's going to shoot off of the copper, therefore having less contact with the copper. Does that make sense? And it goes now, because you got to think about it. It's vapor at this point. It is vapor. So vapor acts the way it acts. So, but it is vapor in itself. Oh God, I don't want to get chemistry on you, but vapor in itself is liquidish as well, right? Like steam, fog. It feels like liquid, but it's just vaporous. Does that make sense? And so it's coating the entire circumference of the piping, whatever the copper tubing that it's coming off of, be it 2-inch, be it 28-inch, be it whatever. It's coating the entire thing. But the amount of degree of angle on the line arm will change the characteristics of the flavor of the whiskey. The longer that vapor sits in the line arm, I think, the more congeners it gets out. Or no. I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll come back to that. But what I'm saying is the copper reacting and the alcohol condensating in the line arm, and then the hot vapor coming past it, redistilling it sometimes at that point. Because when you're pushing steam at the bottom of a pot and you're just boiling it and boiling it and boiling it, and it's evaporating, all that alcohol is evaporating off. It is basically like a scouring pad on the inside, right? And what'll happen is if it stops, because the line arm at any point is cooled off, then it will puddle there, and then it will take hotter vapor to distill it more. Does that make sense? So a lot of times you will get a lot of passive reflux in the line arm as well. But anyway, okay, so then once it gets past the line arm, it goes into the worm or the condenser, right? That is where it's condensed back into a liquid. And at this point, your pot of mash or wort or beer, whatever you have in there, whatever color it is, sometimes it's yellow, brown, black, depending upon the grains you put in it, right? It comes off crystal clear because you are just taking the alcohol off, alcohol and water, both. They are conjoined together molecularly. They're joined together. That's why you can't get 100% alcohol. You could do it chemically, I guess. I don't even know if they've been able to do it chemically to get 100% ethanol. I know we can get 96, 97%, but you're without doing it chemically. The highest you can go really in distillation is 95, maybe 95 and a half. There's a point of diminishing return. You just can't read it. You can't distill it high enough without messing something up and blowing up. Because when you're distilling something with that much volatility, does that make sense? With that much volatility, you don't want to induce more heat to it, because heat with alcohol explosion, right? So you want to it has to be contained. So I say all that. But pot still distillation is batch to batch. So you have a 500 gallon pot. You heat up that 500 gallons. You boil off the alcohol until there's little to none. Some people pull it off at 10%. Some people get what they call the sweet water. At the end, I think that's under 5% is what they call sweet water. And a lot of people will use that. And we're going to talk about that on another episode. A lot of people will take that sweet water, which is barely, it's water, but it has a little bit of alcohol in it. Whereas the other way, it's alcohol with a little bit of water in it, right? This is water with a little bit of alcohol. And they will use that to proof their whiskey down to. So like, let's say coming off the still on our finishing run, we have to be under 80% or 160 proof. So when you go to put it in the barrel, it has to be at under 125 proof, right? So if it's at 140, you can't put it in the barrel and call it whiskey or bourbon or whatever you want to call it. It has to be underneath that. So you have to water it down. So what they'll do is they'll take that sweet water and water it down with that. I digress. That was a caveat, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to say that. So it takes, so like you put 500 gallons in on a 10% mash, and I'm doing the math. This is just mathing, right? At 100% distillation, you would get 50 gallons on a 500 gallon mash, right? Because you'll get 10% of the water that's in there is alcohol. You're not going to get 50 gallons. I guarantee you. Even if you go down to 1%, you're not going to get 50 gallons. There's no way. You're going to get 40, maybe 35, something like that. Mm-hmm. I'm serious. It's a batch to batch. So after you distill it on a pot still, you keep distilling it. So let's say then you end up having, you don't want to have 500 gallons of what they call low wines at this point. And low wines normally end up to be about 35 to 40% alcohol. You really don't want to distill anything over 40% alcohol because it can create some weird things, and it's not as safe. Safety is a big key in distillation because if you're using steam, the vapor is very volatile, and if you have any sort of leak on your system, and it's in contact with electrical or anything like that, it could bang, boom, pow, you're done. And that doesn't make good whiskey when you're dead. Okay. So just understand that. Pot stills are known for producing spirits with depth, complexity, and bold. I'm reading from my notes now. Complexity and bold character. Ideal whiskey for whiskeys, rums, and brandies. So here's the thing. It takes all of those, we're going to talk about it, all of those congeners and pushes them over. It does not fractionalize the congeners out. The limitations of this is it is labor intensive and time consuming. Let's say that 500 gallon pot that you're distilling, it could take 8 hours for that thing to run through. You're talking a working day for 500 gallons. Does that make sense? So, and you're only getting 35 gallons of low wines, or 40 at the max, right? Of low wines. You don't even have enough to put back in the still and redistill. And so that's why people run all the time, every day. Like a lot of the distilleries we talk to on this podcast are smaller distilleries with a smaller setup. They'll do stripping runs, which is what we're talking about. They'll do stripping runs all week until Thursday or Friday, and then they'll do their spirit run. And that's what they put in the barrel. So it might take them a week to do 1 barrel or 3 barrels or 5 barrels a week. Whereas these big distilleries, and we'll get into that, they can do barrels a day. Right? So just understand that. So now let's move on to column still, right? Column still is the exact opposite. Well, not exact, but in a lot of Kentucky distilleries, they run what they would call a pot hybrid. It's a pot still, and then off the line arm is a column that the distillate goes in and gets fractionally distilled again. So it's distilling it and then distilling it again, even on a stripping run. So your stripping run on that type of still would come off at like 60% alcohol or something like that, to where it is a lot. We'll get to that. Sorry. So the column still design is a tall cylindrical column divided in multiple plates or trays. So think of a tiered cake, right? Every tier is independent from itself, right? There's in distillation, I'm sure you guys have seen this. There's a copper plate, or it doesn't have to be copper, but most of the time it's copper, with a little, looks like a little 3/4 copper cap, sometimes they're half inch or 5 inch or what, depending upon how big you are. There's a copper cap, and what happened? That's called a bubble plate, and the distillate will sit there and it will heat that plate up, and that heat, when the vapor going past it, with that heat will make a tiny distillation, and depending upon how many levels you have, that's okay. So that goes to say, like, a lot of these vodka distilleries say distilled 10 times, distilled 20 times. No, it wasn't. It was distilled twice with 20 plates. Does that make sense? By the time you get to that 20th plate, it's colorless, odorless, tasteless almost. So understand that. Um, it has a reflux mechanism that you can recirculate the vapor back to itself. So a lot of times it'll take the distillate, put it back up on top, and run it back over it again, and do that a number of times. And only the highest distillate comes off of that line arm and goes into the condenser. The mass is continuously fed into the still at the top or the middle, and steam rises at the base. Now, this is talking about traditional column still, not the pot hybrid. This would be like the still over at Still Austin, right? That is what they can call a continuous still. So basically, you feed, like, let's say 8 plates up there. It's a 40, 50 foot cylindrical tube. That's all it is. And about 6 to 8, maybe 10 foot up in the air, they inject the wash, grain and all. They just throw it in there like freaking porridge, and they have steam, vaporous steam coming from the bottom, and it heats that up, and instantaneously all of the solids fall to the bottom, right? And the water that is heavier than the steam falls, and then as it's falling, it starts taking the alcohol out of it. It is vapor distilling it. So the vapor's going through the vapor, and it's taking the alcohol molecule with the vapor of the steam up, and the water and all the other crap is going to the bottom. And so then what they do is they go up to the level that they want to take off of, which would be at 160, right? 80% alcohol. They would open a valve. And so all these plates have, depending upon the still, of course, they can have anywhere between 16 to 20 to whatever, it doesn't matter. 6, 5, I've seen 3. Let me look at my notes. They can be made of copper or whatever. Steam rises, alcohol vapors separated onto each plate, condensing and re-vaporizing separately. So every little plate is a tiny distillation. Pop, pop, pop. Yes and no. Okay, yes, it is, but you know what I mean. Like, if you pulled off the second one, it's not going to be flavorful enough for you to be like, oh, let's bottle the second plate. It's not going to taste very good. You got to go up a little ways. So it is a distillation, but it's a very clunky way of doing distillation. That's why they have to have those plates in there, right? So just understand that. Excuse me. Okay. So the spirit can be drawn off at different levels depending upon the desired alcohol purity. So if you want to go up to the top level, open that valve, you're pulling off 95% alcohol up there, guys. That's vodka, right? You go down to 180, you go down to 175. And there's valves at each level, so you can take off whatever you want. And when I went to Still Austin, and I got the little makeshift tour, which was the best tour I've probably had in a while. They were basically saying we pull off of two separate places to get a lower proof and a higher proof. And then they are then mixed together. They're mixed together and then put into, I don't know. Let me see this. Yeah, I don't know if on those type of column stills or the continuous stills, if it's not a what we would call a one and done run, right? They don't put low wines into that. I think they're just doing mash. It's a one time distilled. So think about that. I don't know that for a fact, so don't quote me on that, but I will do some research on that and let you know. But I mean, everything I've found, it says they don't put low wines in there. It's mash that they're putting in there. So that to me, you can see the efficiency of it, right? Like you're dumping wort or mash with your grain, and then so you have this big bucket at the bottom, and it's taking all of that, what they call the stillage, the stuff from the still, it's taking it to a holding tank to hold it, to ship that off. The grains with the water, a lot of times they'll drain the water off of it and then take that grain, just the grain, and give it to cows and stuff around the area. I know that's what most of the distilleries that I've been to, I know that's what they do with their stillage, which is really cool. It's giving back to the community, right? Even though grain-fed cattle isn't the best, but you know, they sell that at Walmart, so it's fine. Grass-fed is the way to go, guys. Grass-fed and finished. Heritage. Anyway, sorry. So the operation is continual, right? So it's very efficient. It's highly efficient. And so you can see why the larger big brand distilleries are going to want to do that. They're going to want to put their distillate to be as effective as possible, because they want, time is money with them. They can't spend the time either. Even if they had a 10,000 gallon pot still, right? A 10,000 gallon pot still isn't going to be enough, and it's going to take so freaking long just to heat up, to where it's like, okay, how is this going to work? You know what I mean? How are we going to make this work? So for them, column still is the way to go. Now, is column still whiskey good? Absolutely. Most of the whiskey that you drink is column still, unless you're a Scotch guy, right? If you're a bourbon drinker, 95%, I don't know this for a fact, but 95% of those distilleries, Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, all of those are using column stills. They revolutionized column stills when they came out with coffee. Yeah, coffee was one of the first ones that come up with this distillation process. It's not the coffee drink, it's the name of the guy. He created this still setup, and they were like, whoa. And it still created flavor, obviously, because your whiskey is very flavorful, right? But if you have a pot still whiskey next to a column still whiskey, you're going to taste the difference. And that's what we're fixing to get into. Column still strips out more congeners, leading to a lighter, cleaner, and more neutral spirit. That's why with a lot of bourbons, you'll get barrel char, vanilla, caramel. That is from the wood. That is not from the distillate, right? With a pot still bourbon, you're going to get the grain notes. You're going to get, and that's why a lot of craft, quote unquote, craft whiskeys are using pot stills. And that's because all of that flavor goes through. Does that make sense? Like, just understanding that the reason that Wild Turkey's flavor is so consistent, and I know they change and there's flavor drift and stuff like that, but why they're so consistent is because they've been using the same column still forever. Same grain, same mash bill, same everything. They're making the same product over and over again. Whereas a pot still small craft distillery they're using the grains available to them, right? And they go and they batch distill 500, 1,000 gallons at a time, and then they fill said barrels that they can get from what cooperage, and we've talked to multiple people about this, whatever cooperage they can get them from, Independent Stave, Kelvin, whoever wants to give me barrels. Well, the difference between different cooperages is the fact the wood comes from different places, and wood, just like everything else, is inherently different. We've talked about that multiple times on the wood episodes that we had, and talking to Christopher Conrad over at Badmo, right? We know that wood, everything makes a difference. Every process of what you're doing makes a big difference in what you're trying to produce in the whiskey world. The grains you get, the water you have, the distillation process that you're doing, the barrels that you use. And then it all comes down to that guy who says, I bought that whiskey because it was a pretty bottle. That's the next episode. Oh Lord. I will tell you this this SMWF sorry, walk down memory lane is so nice. That smoke, the little hint of smoke at the back end, oh my gosh, it's really talking to me. I love, and I know you guys are bourbon people. Most of you are bourbon nerds, and I love you for it, right? I love a good sticky bourbon. Don't get me wrong, a good pot stilled bourbon. But there's something about when it gets a little cooler outside, I want something a little smoky in my glass. Yeah, I do. So just understand that we're going to probably get into a lot of smoke this winter. So the key comparisons. Let's talk about some key comparisons. Pot still is batch. Column still is continuous. Pot still is flavorful, rich, robust, full of character. Column stills are light, clean, and more neutral. Pot stills are less efficient. Column stills are highly efficient. Pot still are lower proof. That we didn't talk about that. Pot still is only going to give you so much alcohol. If you put 40% alcohol, you'll maybe get 85. You might hit 90, depending upon at the very beginning of your run. So getting to that 160 is pretty easy for a pot still guy. Yeah, it's pretty easy for a pot still guy. For a column still, they turn the knob, and it's not a big deal. But column stills are mainly used for vodka, gin, and light whiskey, right? Whereas pot stills are used for whiskey, rum, and brandy. So understanding that. But the world has changed. The world has changed ever since the invention of the coffee still. The pot still dates back thousands of years. The column still was revolutionized in the industrial 1900s or 19th century. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That to me is the whole thing. Yeah, one whole page with one sentence. Like, I hate that shit. Anyway, my trash can isn't full, so I'm banking it, bro. Banking it. All right, now you ready to get nerdy? Oh, I'm gonna hit it. Ready? Oh God, I got the cover on my mixer because I'm doing something. All right, let's get into the nerdy bits. No, actually, I need to talk to you about our sponsor. Yeah, I do. So there's two, but we're going to do one right now, and then I'll do one in a couple minutes. So I want to talk to you a little bit about hinterhofdistilling.com. No, not .com. Hinterhof Distilling. Go to hinterhofdistilling.com and pick you up a bottle. They're based out of Arnold, California. They're doing some amazing stuff with bourbons, ryes, and American single malt. With their American single malt, they're doing a discovery series. And one of the coolest things that I've found personally, and this is my personal recommendation with Hinterhof, is they are just distilling the whiskey that they want to make. They're making what they want to make, and they're releasing it when it's ready. 18 months, 19 months, 2 years, who knows? And the mash bills are ever changing. Each batch has a different mash bill, right? So it's going to be a different flavor. It's like Pokemon. You got to catch them all, right? So understanding that and understanding that they're working towards being different. They're using different cooperages. They're using different grain recipes. All of it's malt, right? But this one might have honey malt. This one might have biscuit malt. This one could have carapils. This one could have some dark chocolate malt, right? And that's the cool thing about what they're doing is they're revolutionizing single malt in California. Now, they got pretty good distribution. So go over to hinterhofdistilling.com, pick you up a bottle right now. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about congeners. Whew. Yeah, it's going to get deep, bro. This is going to get deep. What is a congener? Like, what is it? Who raise your hand if you know what a congener is. You put your hand down. You don't know. Sitting in the back sleeping. You don't know what I'm talking about. Congeners are compounds other than ethanol, obviously, and water, which are created during the fermentation and retained or separated during distillation. Okay. There are alcohols other than ethanol in the fermentation. There's methanol, which we know that's the one that, oh, don't drink the moonshine, it'll make you go blind. That's because of methanol. There is propanol and butanol. So propane, butane, right? Yeah, I mean, kind of, yes. I mean, it's a gaseous ethanol. They're all anyway. And so number 2 is esters. These are formed when the alcohol reacts with acids, aka like acetic acid, lactic acid, malic acid, all of these acids that a lot of brewers and distillers use in their product. Some of them are known for their fruity and floral notes. Ethyl acetate smells like pears. And that's so cool. We're getting into nerd central, guys. We're 50 minutes in and we're just now getting to the nerdy part. I love that. And then there's acids. Like I said, lactic acid, acetic acid, and they contribute to the sour or tanginess of the distillate. And then number 4, which this one, I don't know. I don't care. I know. I'm going to say it. Aldehydes. They are created during fermentation. Example, acetaldehyde, which can impart a grassy or nutty aroma. And there's also formaldehyde. Yeah. But at smallest quantities. I mean, you're killing your liver anyway, bro. You're fine. Okay, phenols. They're particularly present in peated spirits. Okay, so this one is slightly peated. I would say 1%, 2% peated. Phenols contribute to a smoky medicinal note. And then there are sulfurous compounds, often removed with copper. Come on, guys. Act like I don't know what I'm talking about. Often removed in copper by the pot still, but in small amounts can have a savory or meaty characteristic. And that's why sherried scotches are so good, because sherry has a very sulfurous taste to it. If you try sherry by itself, it's okay. Some sherries are good. Don't get me wrong. I have one sherry. It's a PX sherry. Anyway, it was a $22 bottle, so don't trip. It's not the best sherry I've ever had, but it is so sulfurous. Like, it is like, smell like a skunk. There's a town not close, it's about 2 hours away from us, called Lampasas, right? And those of you who know Lampasas know they have a creek known as Sulphur Creek, and it literally smells like, yeah, it stinks, bro. It smells like rotten eggs, dead skunk. It is a freaking nasty smell. Every time I drive, I lived in Lampasas for about, 6 months. Back in the day, when I was a young buck in the game, didn't drink a lick of whiskey. I was like 6 years old. Anyway, so here's how congeners impact flavor. And I'm reading from my notes, guys, because I want to get this right. I want you guys to know. I don't want you to think that I'm just shooting off the hip here. I'm not. You see all these books behind me? You might not, because, we already talked about that. So pot still, because of their batch operation and limited reflux, but we do get passive reflux, right? Pot stills are known for greater concentration of congeners that pass through to the final spirit, resulting in a richer and more complex flavor profile. That is why Balcones whiskey, and I'm not talking about everybody else. Balcones whiskey is sticky, dirty. It's molasses, right? Because molasses in itself is dirty. It is dirty, grungy, nasty, but yet it's sweet. It has all of those things, and those are congeners. All those things I said are congeners. So that's awesome. For example, heavier alcohols like fusel oils, which are oily and nutty flavors, are more likely to make it through the distillation process. That's why with a lot of Texas whiskeys, I get a waxy walnut taste, right? Have you ever had, there's some walnuts out there, and I don't care for walnuts just to eat them as themselves, right? They're good, on top of brownie or something like that, but they're like waxy. They taste like they have wax on them, which they, appeal or whatever freaking gates. Anyway, I digress. Anyway, so let's talk about column still. Column still, the multiple distillation stages within a column still strips out many of the congeners, resulting in a cleaner, lighter spirit. The reflux process in a column still ensures that heavier compounds fall back down into the liquid below, separating them from the final product. So think about Squid Games, whatever. You have to kill off all these other people to where you can make it up to the top. And once you make it up to the top, you're the one that gets in the barrel. That Squid Games is column still. Hunger Games, no, I don't know. They're both the same. They're both the same. Anyway, so here's the factors that influence congeners. Fermentations. Longer fermentation times generally create more congeners. So these people that are turning and burning on their fermentations, they're fermenting out in 2 to 3 days. They are not getting as many congeners as these people who are letting their fermentations go 7-10 days, letting them getting lactobacillus and stuff like that fermentation on top. Like Still Austin, who I love with all my heart. I love Still Austin. They are Texas through and through. It is a lighter, cleaner spirit, right? Because of their column still, and their fermentation is 3 days. That's why. That's why. You're using good grain, obviously. Most of it Texas grown, which is super cool. I love that. Their 3-day fermentation, and then they're column stilling it. So like they have everything going for them, right? Whereas somebody like, I'm going to say it, like Andalusia, they're doing longer fermentations. They're still using a similar yeast. So it's not like they're using some funky yeast, which, Moose over there is probably using some funky yeast on some stuff, but not on his core range, right? The yeast is taking longer, 5 to 7 days, instead of the 3, which I know you think that's 2 days. It's not that big of a deal. Yeast does its work and dies. It kind of sucks. Like to be a yeast strain, that sucks, right? Because you're like, I don't know, like I ate all the food, I got fat and happy, and then I died. I mean, if you're gonna go, it's like Homer Simpson. I don't know if you ever seen that episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes to hell, which I'm not trying to be morbid or anything like that. Don't rebuking in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So Homer goes to hell, and in hell, he's being fed donuts. Donuts. I mean, we're talking 10,000 freaking, and the dude just eats them. He's just like, and then at the very end, they run out of donuts in hell. And Homer is like 10,000 pounds, right? And he's like, more. That's how yeast are. And then once they hit more, they're like, oh, there's nothing left. Well, then I'm going to have to die. Because but they work so violently. I hate to say it like that. They work very violently. If you've ever been to a distillery where they have an open tank fermentation, that is violent. And all those bubbles on top are farts, right? They're yeast farts coming up to the top. And then they're like, stick your finger in there, bro. I'm like, no, I'm not sticking my finger in yeast farts. What are you talking about? That's stupid. Why would I do? Okay, I'm going to, all right, cool. But like, there's some fermentations, like there's a strain of yeast out there. And some of you who know will know it's called angel yeast. It's a yellow label yeast. So this is a yeast that's made for liquor making. It has what I would consider in the sake and more Asian spirit realm as a koji, right? It has this sort of koji with it that when you put it on anything, name a thing. Okay, corn. Let's do this. I will do this, and then I digress and move on. And we might end up having to have a round 2. I am literally 2 pages in. Just saying. When, let's say you have corn, just corn, And with corn, it has a husk on it, right? If you ever tried to eat popcorn before you pop it, have you tried to do, or you ever ate popcorn and you get that kernel, right? That's not popped and it breaks your freaking tooth when you're at the movies. Try to eat that, right? You can't, right? It's hard. It needs to be boiled. You boil it and then it softens it up, right? Well, this yellow label yeast, which has this weird koji culture, who knows what it is? It's probably AI made or whatever. This koji culture goes in there and breaks down the structural components of the corn and it makes it into a slurry. How can it break down a kernel of corn that has not been boiled? It's not been boiled one bit, but yet it can break it down. There are yeast strains out there that can do that. So you're talking about long fermentations. These guys can literally break down corn, but yet your body cannot break down corn, if you know what I'm saying. If you've ever ate corn and then the next day you're like, Anyway, I digress. So pot still whiskeys are rich in esters, fusel oils, giving you a robust, fruity, nutty, and spicy note. Vodkas on a column still have minimal congeners for a clean and neutral profile. Most peated scotches have a high phenol content for smoky and medicinal flavors. Rums have a lot of esters in them, which rums is a totally different thing because they do what they call dunder pits and all the other things trying to create those esters. So pot still rums are often give you tropical fruit notes, which is really cool. We're doing the rum episode, don't worry. So like congeners are kind of like personalities. Think about that. Congeners are like personalities. I'm real peaty smoky. Look at this. I have one page with literally there's nothing on it. Like, I don't know why I do that. Like, I write things and I write things. Anyway. Okay, so we're going to get into a couple of these and then we're going to stop because we're at an hour. I don't mind hanging out with you a little bit more, but I've ran through my sample and I don't know if I want to get another one. So, all right. So we're going to get through a couple of these. I am more than likely going to do a part 2. Yeah, because we haven't even got to the effects of it on bourbons and scotches and stuff like that. So here's the deal. And if you've listened this long and you're an hour in and you've already listened through all this, let me know in the comments. I will put a poll. Oh, God, here we go. With the dude putting the poll up, right? I will do a poll that says, do you want a part 2 of pot still versus column still? I'm probably going to do it anyway, but do you want a part 2? And I will try to do it like next, right? Because here's the deal. I know that you guys don't care. I could run a little late and we could get through this, but here's the deal. I have other things I need to do. And also if like, let's say it's getting cool outside and you're driving in your car, you might not want to hear me talking for 3 hours long, right? You might want to, your wife's like, okay, can we get over this? Like, well, let's listen to some music or something. So I'm trying to understand that we have a very low attention span in the world these days with social media and all the things. So I don't want to keep you. I'm not trying to pull Joe Rogan type things, especially talking about myself, because this I know that I also know that there are quite a few people out there that do not like these types of podcasts. They want the interview type podcast. Well, yes, I get it. I want to talk to all of the people. I do. Everybody. I want to hear their story. I want to talk about everything that they're doing. But I also feel like this is what started the whole channel, the whole thing. This is what started it, and this is where it needs to go. It needs to stay here. And if you don't like these, that's fine. It's every other one, or I try to do it every other one. Sometimes it's every third one or whatever. See, I have people lined up and they're ready to go, but I don't want to get it. I don't want to be that niche guy that just does interviews, right? I want to be the guy that's presenting a product that you guys want to hear. And that product has something to do with our next sponsor. Yeah, I know you guys have waited this long. Let's talk about our next sponsor. And I'm sorry, Jake, that I didn't put this a little earlier in the podcast. I should have, but it's here. So we are going to talk about. Oh, let me give you a thing. Yeah, we are going to talk about Texas Whiskey Festival. Yeah, they are the newest sponsor for us, and that is going on April 5th, April 12th, not 15th, April 12th, 2025, in Bee Cave at the Star Hill Ranch. You can go to texaswhiskeyfestival.com and get your tickets right now. They're on sale now. And the cool thing about the Whiskey Festival that I have been multiple years, me and my brother-in-law, we hang out. It's a fun time. He knows a little bit about whiskey, just enough to follow me around and talk to all the cool people that are there. Most of those people have been on the podcast, so it feels like a family reunion. And there's anywhere between 30 to 40 Texas-based distilleries at this festival. And it is only Texas-based distilleries. So you're going to be at people like Garrison, Still Austin, Iron Root, Andalusia. All of those people will be there, hopefully. All of those people will be there, and you'll get to try cool samples from them. Now, they do have a VIP package that you can pick up, and that VIP package gives you early access. You get in an hour early. Sometimes some of these people have early access pours where, like, hey, you're a VIP, I'm going to give you a special pour of something that's fixing to come out. I got to drink, when it first came out, the Bottled and Bond Rye from Balcones. It was really good. It was really nice. I digress. I will tell you that the Texas Whiskey Festival, I haven't been to the Kentucky Festival, obviously. I haven't been to Whiskey Riot. I haven't been to any of these other ones, but I can tell you that this one right here blew me away with the amount of support that they give all of the people, the distilleries, and the people the patrons that are going. I can't thank Jake enough for all that he does for that festival. He works his butt off all year for one day, and it shows. They have a whole venue of things. They have food trucks, cigars, all the things, and then they have dueling pianos at the end of the night. They have booths. They have people selling things. Last year, I got a really cool whiskey snifter glass, really ornate amber glass or whatever. It was really fun. So if you guys are into that, go to texaswhiskeyfestival.com and pick up your tickets today, April 12th. It's coming. So I'm going to keep talking about these guys because it's coming this year, and I will be there. So I will be doing not a live, but I will be doing a program at the festival. So be prepared for that. Let's get into two of these new topics. So the major congeners, other than ethanol. Now we talked about that, but this is going into more detail. Number one, it's the one that we always talk about, the one that hurts people, the one that makes you go blind, and that's methanol. Methanol is formed by the pectins from the mash. Now, people think of pectins, you think of pectinase or something like that. That's from fruit, right? Well, okay, so think of a grain, and I'm whatever. Grain is the offshoot of a plant, right? So it is, let's say, the fruit of said plant, rye, barley, corn, right? So it will, in fact, have pectin in it, especially fruit-based washes like brandy. So when people distill brandy, they have to be very much aware of the methanol that's in there because it can be a higher concentration of it. The flavor impact of it, toxic in large amounts, but largely removed during distillation. Trace amounts may give a faint sharpness and astringency. So if you've ever had, now that's not astringency from like the barrel tannin, right? Tannin can present as astringent as well. If you've ever had a whiskey that is a little sharp, little what we would call heady, yeah, then it probably has a little bit more methanol than some of the other ones. it is what it is. Take that for what it is. Um, but but higher alcohol content as well can be impactful as well. Propanol, isobutanol, and amyl alcohol, AMYL. I don't know. They contribute to an oily, nutty, and slightly spicy note in the finish, in the spirit, also often found in whiskeys, because you have to think about it. It's not yeast inherently doesn't know it's making alcohol, right? Yeast is just doing its job like most people do. They go about doing their job and they don't know the impact of what they're doing. Now, most yeast strains are bred to make ethanol. That's what they're bred for. Bread yeast is a really good ethanol maker. It can make up to a 10% mash, sometimes more, depending. I was listening to a podcast with Alan Bishop, and he was talking about ethanol, and he was talking about Fleischmann's bread yeast as Seagram's. Seagram's. That was one of their main yeast that they used was Fleischmann's bread yeast. Instead of getting some hybridized whiskey yeast, they used Fleischmann's bread yeast. You know why? Because it's consistent. Because bread people need to make sure that their bread is going to rise, right? So it had to be consistent. And it's Saccharomyces, right? Cerevisiae, whatever. It's that. But the thing that it is consistent. Whereas some of these other ones, they're not as consistent. They can give you a 7% mash or a 14% mash. You have no idea. Whereas Fleischmann's is a little more consistent. But we're going to talk about esters, and then I'm going to get out of here, right? Esters, they're formed in the production by reaction with alcohol with acids during the fermentation or aging. The flavor profile is ethyl acetate. That's the aroma of pear or nail polish remover if excessive. So I have had some whiskeys, especially, that smell like nail polish remover. Yeah, they do. They're not great. So yeah, that had too much ethyl acetate. It's found in light and fruity spirits like rum and unaged whiskey. Oh man, this one's going to be difficult for me to say. Isoamyl acetate. ISOAMYL. Isoamyl acetate. The aroma is banana or bubble gum. That's what Jack Daniels is doing. It's found in pot still rums and fruity whiskeys. Ethyl butyrate. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. Aromas of pineapple and tropical fruit. That's what you're getting in a lot of rums, right? And every once in a while, I'll get that in a whiskey. I'll get some pineapple or some very passion fruit or something like that. It's really nice when you get it, but you have to also understand that these esters are coming from that specific thing in the fermentation. They're found in aged rums and bourbons. Okay. I want to say fentanyl, but it's not fentanyl. Fentanyl acetate. It's the aroma is floral and honey-like. Now I say honey all the time on whiskeys, especially scotches, which it says found in single malt scotches and brandies. So all of these congeners, esters, are highly desired in pot still spirits due to their complex aroma, but excessive concentration and column distillation can lead to overly sharp notes. So take that for what it is. I'm going to put a line right here to say this is where we got for today, and we will catch that one on the next one. I don't know if it'll be the next episode or if it'll be a little while from now. And here's your call to action. Are you ready? Your call to action for this podcast is a follow, like, subscribe. Obviously, I need 5-star reviews, and if you don't I don't even care. Okay, and I'm saying this as me. I don't even care about the review. in itself. I don't. I mean, I do. I care about what you guys think, and I want you guys to tell me if I'm falling and if I'm not doing what you want. But the 5-star review is basically an algorithm cheat code, and so the more 5-star reviews I get, the more people can see this podcast, and the more people that can say, "Hey, I didn't even know he had a podcast. What? Really? Well, he has over 100 episodes. Lord, I need to catch up." That's what the 5-star reviews do. Now, a 4-star review, that doesn't give me nothing. 5-star reviews is what I need. And also, if you want to comment on any of these episodes, please do. Please let me know how I'm doing. If there's any episodes you want me to do a deep dive on, let me know. If there's any people that you want me to talk to or talk about, I'd be more than happy to do it. I want this to be a back and forth between you and I. So if there's anything you want me to reach out, anything you want to learn about, maybe I can learn something about it as well. I learned quite a bit about esters and congeners just doing research on this. So this helps me be a better person, and in turn, I can give that information back to you. So again, I digress, but at the same time, if you guys are finding value in this podcast, if you find that this podcast is just the bee's knees for you, right? Think about going to Patreon, patreon.com/whiskey shaman, and signing up over there. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. They will get the video of this. If you want to see me hanging out in the shed with my Into the AM shirt on, I'm not wearing a button up today. No, I'm not. We're working a little bit in the shed, doing some stuff. The wife's out of town right now, so I can do the podcast. We're doing all the things, right? So if you want to go, patreon.com/whiskey shaman. I thank all of my sponsors. I thank all the people who are supporting me, not only the patrons, but Bad Motivator Barrels. Click the link down below and get you a barrel. Come on, they're amazing. Even if you're not into the brewing and home distilling or whatever, I don't care. You could. I have the Infinity barrel right there that I have single malt scotches that I need to get out. I need to get them out. Get out. I need to get them out of there because I need to put some bourbon in there, right? I said I was going to do that first of the year, and I still haven't done it. I'm going to. What happened? I'm clicking buttons on the computer. I'm sorry. But also Z Smith Whiskey and Mixology. Zach, I love you. I love you to death, brother. You're number one. You're awesome. Go over there. If he's into cocktail curations, he's into whiskey bar backing, setting up your whiskey list for your restaurant, your hotel, whatever it is. He does private tastings for people. If you're in his area, obviously he's not going to fly to Hawaii. He might fly to Hawaii for you, but he's not going to go all over the globe for his minimal fee. But Zach, I love you. Thank you very much. And Hunter Haas and Texas Whiskey Festival as well. You guys are I thank you so much for supporting me, this fledgling podcast, trying to do something. And I appreciate it. And to all my rabid supporters, all of you out there stuck with me through all the BS and through the life and through the love and through the awesome episodes that we've had. I can't thank you enough. 2025 is about bringing you guys to the forefront. And if you guys want me to call you out and give you a shout out on the show, just hit me up. Let me know. I would be more than happy to do that. I thank all the people who listen. Miss D, she's on the Patreon, so she's gonna get a shout out next week. But I thank all of you people who are constantly coming through and just giving me feedback and giving me love. Psychman's number one with all this. Psychman gives me so much love and so much support through everything. He's been my ride or die from the beginning, and I can't tell him enough how much I appreciate it. But at this point, I'm rambling, and I thank you guys so much. Y'all be good. Prepare for round 2, where we're going to get super nerdy. I promise. We got through the basics. Now we're going to get through the super nerdy stuff, and I'm going to go right into it. We're going to go right into it, and it's going to be hard, and you're going to be like, oh, God, what are we doing? Yeah, it's going to get crazy because I didn't even break the surface on it, bro. So y'all be good. Be nice to each other. Drink water. It's going to get cold. We're in Texas, and it's just now fixing to get cold, so pray for us, please. No, pray for me, because as a plumber, when it gets cold, things start to break, if you know what I mean, which is good for business, but it's bad, also bad for business as well, because like I can't be at two places at once. I can only be at one place. I'm a one-man show. So love y'all. Y'all be good. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep your spirits up. Peace.